Can myth and spirituality provide a roadmap to our own transformation and rebirth? Sometimes in life, we get stuck or trapped by our circumstances. Maybe it's a relationship that we know isn't going anywhere, or a job that's not in alignment with our values. Sometimes there's nothing necessarily wrong, but we just have this vague sense that we're not living up to our potential. Where do we turn when we know we need to make a radical change in our lives? Does the realm of myth and spirituality give us a secret framework to transform ourselves? When we look at the myths of rebirth and renewal, we can get a sense of how we can make big changes in the here and now. Rebirth stories are those where a seemingly ordinary man or woman awakens to their true purpose and rapidly acquires the skills that they need to fulfill their destiny. Or it may be a retired god who spent the last eon sleeping on the highest mountain, but suddenly he finds renewed interest in the world of mortals. Rebirth is different from both resurrection and reincarnation. It's not something that we have to wait until the afterlife to experience. We can have it in this life if we seek it. The hero's quest for rebirth is a powerful motif that we see in all spiritual systems, transcending language, culture, and religion. How can we model the hero to bring about our own transformation and renew our experience of life and enjoyment of the world around us? And just as importantly, how do we avoid the pitfalls that await the hero? In a lot of stories, false teachers are hiding in plain sight, seeking to deny the hero's rebirth or use it for their own benefit. How can we ensure that this doesn't happen to us? That during our transformation, we remain true to ourselves? Let's start our journey in the darkness and look at what happens to the potential hero if they don't listen to the call to transformation. If we ignore the call and carry on living through the situation that pains us, we are likely to experience a loss of soul. In spiritual terms, this lost soul state is described during shamanic practices of soul retrieval. In multiple shamanistic traditions, when an individual becomes severely withdrawn and depressed, it's believed that their soul has fragmented from the physical body, and it's actually become lost in another plane of reality. The trigger for the fragmentation of the soul may be a traumatic series of events, and potentially even interference by negative spirits. To reintegrate the soul, the shaman must travel through the non-physical plane with the help of their spirit guides, then find the lost soul and help it to confront and process the trauma before guiding it back to the sick person's body. In the psychiatrist Carl Jung's writings, this loss of soul process is called the abaissement du niveau mental, which in English refers to a loss of personality and a lowering of one's mental faculty. When an individual is unable to experience what it truly desires, and is instead forced to endure that which it hates, day after day, eventually the psyche weakens and withdraws into itself. Just getting through the day consumes every last ounce of energy, and there's no strength left to do anything that brings enjoyment. Jung believed that the loss of soul manifested in people as malaise, depression, and even contributed to chronic illness. What happens next in the hero's quest, beyond the threat of this loss of soul? Perhaps they were able to leave behind the harmful patterns of their former life all on their own, and thereby avoid the loss of soul altogether. Or perhaps they needed the aid of a shaman, a healer, or in the modern context, a therapist, to help them process their situation and provide guidance for the next phase of life. Either way, the hero now stands on the precipice of the unknown. They understand their desire for rebirth, but they don't know where to seek it yet. Unfortunately, they'll soon meet fools and charlatans, all promising a shortcut to the rebirth that the hero seeks. In the Odyssey, the seafaring hero Odysseus details how his ship was blown off course by strong winds, which led him and his crew to happen upon the island of the Lotus Eaters. The island's inhabitants subsist exclusively on food prepared from the lotus flowers that grow there. They give Odysseus' crew some food to eat, but Odysseus soon realizes that the lotus has narcotic and hallucinogenic properties. His men fall into a state of peaceful apathy and even forget their homes and the purpose for their voyage. They desire to relax with their fellow lotus eaters and indulge in the pleasures of the intoxicating flower. Odysseus manages to free his crew by locking them aboard his ship and forcing them to fast. In this myth, we see two factors that threaten to derail us from our own journey toward transformation, namely mob psychology and the allure of luxury. The poisonous lotus offers a counterfeit fast track to self-transformation in the form of unbridled peace and serenity. And as no one has ever left the island, the large group makes it seem like it's a legitimate path to rebirth. Here, Jung cautions us to be wary of groups enticing us with promises of spiritual ecstasy, riches and pleasure, or the fulfillment of all our desires. In its worst form, this mob psychology makes us susceptible to cults and extremist groups, which promise us liberation through adherence to a charismatic leader who will probably never have our best interests at heart. They prey upon our insecurity and inexperience of the world we find ourselves in. Multi-level marketing schemes and online get-rich-quick gurus also entice us in a similar way. Instead of selling to us on the merits of their product, they deceive us with notions of quick wealth and becoming your own boss. These are the quasi-spiritual promises of rebirth for our modern capitalist culture. And when we get caught up in these, the product is in fact ourselves, our unquestioning devotion to a false teacher or goal. Now, what I'm about to say may seem contradictory given everything I've just said, but group psychology isn't necessarily bad. In fact, Jung says that it can be quite good on our path to rebirth. The key difference here is in the group that we attach ourselves to. Religious or spiritual groups, as long as they don't apply high control tactics, can be quite beneficial. These communities can help us to deepen our spiritual understanding, and so be a stepping stone on our own path to transformation. But the limitation here is that the spiritual community can only bring us to the doorstep of transformation. To open the door, we must be willing to study and meditate alone as individuals. If we, like Odysseus, can stave off the false promises of the lotus eaters of our day, then a number of tools for our self-transformation open up to us. Jung says that identification with a hero from myth or religion can greatly aid us in our own rebirth. If we envision ourselves as standing in the place of the hero and accomplishing what they accomplished, then we can apply the lessons that they learned and the obstacles that they overcame to our own lives. The Egyptian cult of Osiris took great inspiration from the god's rebirth after being assassinated by his brother Set and then descending into the underworld. This rebirth myth was so important to the Egyptians that Osiris was revered as a god of fertility and agriculture. He was responsible for the flooding of the Nile, which marked the start of the fertile season. Deceased pharaohs were believed to be reborn alongside Osiris in the afterlife. If we move to ancient Greece, the Eleusinian Mysteries were a series of initiation rituals that triggered transformation and rebirth within the individual. Using the myths of the fertility goddesses Demeter and Persephone, the mystery religion leveraged the cycle of the seasons as a metaphor for one's spiritual rebirth. The mysteries were intended to, quote, elevate man above the human sphere into the divine, and to assure his redemption by making him a god, and so conferring immortality upon him, end quote. In both examples, a major component is for the adherents of the faith to identify themselves with the god, to envision themselves going through the same hardships and triumphs as the god. To Jung, this meditative practice was fundamental to the process of psychological rebirth. We can compare psychological rebirth to looking into a mirror, for example. On one side, we see our ordinary mortal selves. On the other side, we see the godly version of ourselves, capable of so much more and unfazed by the struggles that bring us so much stress in our lives. As we gaze into the mirror, we gradually mold ourselves into what we see. We are not one, but we are a pair of twins, one mortal and one godly. This archetype of the divine mirror or the divine twins is present in mythology. The Dioscuri were twin brothers within Greek mythology. Although their mother Leda gave birth to them at the same time, one brother, Pollux, was fathered by Zeus. The other twin, Castor, was fathered by Tyndareus, a mortal king of Sparta. Together, they worked in perfect cooperation to rescue shipwrecked sailors, hunt the Caledonian boar, and journey aboard the Argo. When the pair fought to rescue their sister Helen from Theseus, Castor was defeated in battle. Rather than letting his brother descend to the underworld, Pollux sacrificed half of his immortality so that Castor could go to Olympus. Castor stepped into godhood through the help of his divine brother, Pollux. Castor and Pollux are also the basis of the constellation and astrological sign Gemini. The divine mirror motif is also present in Hinduism. In the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, Prince Arjuna and Krishna are first cousins. However, Krishna is an avatar of the supreme god Vishnu. Krishna reveals his true cosmic nature to Arjuna at the onset of a great battle, preparing him for what lies ahead. So, we can think deeply about these deities, motifs, and archetypes, and use them as our reflection in a divine mirror. In doing so, we may hope to experience that sense of psychological renewal to help us move into a new phase of life. But is there anything more that we can do? Here, Jung extols the benefits of following a regimented spiritual discipline, and specifically calls out practices like yoga. The meditative practices of yoga are meant to promote self-realization and liberation from suffering, which are both key hallmarks of rebirth. Yoga traces its origin to the supreme god Shiva, who is considered the Adiyogi, or the first practitioner and master of yoga. At the dawn of civilization thousands of years ago, Shiva meditated atop the Himalayas and poured out his wisdom to 7 sages. This wisdom became yogic science and knowledge of the cosmos. The 7 sages carried this knowledge to all continents of the earth. Well, I wasn't intending on this video turning into a yoga ad, but I think the significance of the story of Shiva is that spiritual practice is not confined to any one particular place, but that the science of personal transformation and rebirth exists across all cultures and religions. We can readily find similar spiritual principles outlined in other mystical traditions, such as Sufism, Kabbalah, or the Ignatian spiritual exercises, to name just a few. Throughout the spiritual traditions of the world, we see that there are signs and clues everywhere, encouraging us to step out of our mundane existence and into our true purpose. We are not meant to be dissatisfied with our lives. Quite the opposite, really. We are capable of more than we think is possible, if we only know where to look. Thank you so much for watching. Before you go, let me know what you think in the comments below. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell for more videos like these. See you next time.